Okay, so we're going to be doing a bunch of reading in today's video, because a piece published by Marc Dumont yesterday on Montreal Hockey Now analyzes the Canadiens' pros and cons of a potential Mitch Marner contract. Now, we did already make one video commentary exploring the idea of a Marner to Montreal type of angle, but we did combine that discussion with a talk about Marner in Vancouver and Marner in Edmonton. Maybe if Marner was with the Oilers, they wouldn't have choked. Okay, never mind. Nah, he's kind of used to playing on teams that choke away whatever momentum they have. But anyways, Mitch Marner is probably going to be a free agent. That guy's as good as gone. There's no way that he re-signs with the Maple Leafs, right? Yeah, we've kind of already established that over the past week and a bit. But the Montreal Canadiens are a team that a lot of folks are talking about. Could they add a free agent like Mitch Marner? Could they add an $11, $12 million AAV guy? Let's dive into the pros and cons, because Dumont does go out there and highlight a lot of them. This article will be linked in the description as well. I don't want to go over every single point that's highlighted here, but I do want to talk about some of the main ones that I thought were interesting. For the pros that you have written in the piece, it's essentially just saying, hey, Marner's very good at scoring points. Dumont writes that he is one of the most talented playmakers in the league, and I know a lot of folks would disagree with that right now. Use the momentum of the playoffs and how disappointing he and Matthews were in that setting to discredit what Marner is capable of doing. But this is a 100-point caliber guy who finally broke past that barrier this previous season after having so many years of being on pace for 100 points. He is in the midst of his statistical prime, and since he's a player with an elite skill set, he will likely buck the downward trend that usually takes over whenever an NHL player reaches 30 years old. He is one of the most talented playmakers in the league, producing 105 assists at 5v5 over the course of the last 3 seasons. That places him in 6th place amongst all NHL players, with only McKinnon, Crosby, Kucherov, McDavid, and Draisaitl producing more assists at 5v5 in that stretch. You also have the fact that he can play penalty kill, and he can play down the middle, which would be reasonably good for the Canadiens. There is this talk about a center, and Marner was a center back in his London Knights days. Hadn't really played too much center in the National Hockey League compared to the wing, but there is that chance that you have a solid second-line guy behind Nick Suzuki if you were to bring him in. One of the last pros that Dumont writes about in this piece is the Marner playoff production. Because I know it's an easy, low-hanging piece of fruit to go out there and grab, but Dumont writes here, as for Marner's impact in the postseason, he'd argue that that's a matter that has been overblown due to the intense media coverage in Toronto. Marner had 13 points in 13 games this year, just 2 points behind William Nylander for the team lead. That pushed his career totals to 13 goals and 50 assists in 70 playoff games. 63 total points. A very solid production rate when we consider how difficult it is to score in mid-May. I think that also does play a part of it too. It's the fact that Marner doesn't score in the most important games of the playoffs, and in these important games he'll throw the puck over the glass and just put himself in the absolute worst spot possible to get totally lambasted and flamed for what went down on the ice. But playoff losses and playoff embarrassments play a part into what Dumont writes here about the cons. And this is why, really, I'm making this video here today, because I think some of these ideas really do play a part as to Marner's identity of a player right now, and whether or not this would translate fully if he were to go to Montreal. Dumont writes, while I'm not overly concerned with the theory that Marner disappears in the playoffs, he has dealt with a long streak of heart-wrenching losses in the spring, and just like eating 47 tacos in your basement, the stench of losing is very hard to air out. A lot like his captain, Austin Matthews, Marner's body language suggests he's quick to accept his fate once the Leafs stop winning. That's far from ideal, especially since Marner has worn the alternate captain badge on many occasions. However, I'd also propose he's following Matthews' lead, which means a new leadership group could potentially give Marner the support and mentorship he needs to thrive. You'll never see Suzuki or Gallagher smile as they are battered and bruised in the playoffs, whereas Auston Matthews will never live down his unserious attitude when the Habs eliminated his team from the playoffs in 2021. And linked is the image of Matthews kind of chuckling and laughing around during that moment 4 years ago. On that note, if the Habs were to sign Marner, he would not be included in the leadership group, at least not at first. Given his track record, removing some of the responsibilities that come with being in a leadership position seems to be the wisest way forward. Now, I did think that was really interesting. Because in Toronto, you would say that the leadership group, the leadership core of the team, Auston Matthews being the captain of the Maple Leafs whilst displaying habits like this, when they lose, he doesn't really play any better, he doesn't have that same Nathan MacKinnon-like ability or will to take over games when he's angry. Auston Matthews just kind of pieces out there. And Mitch Marner, following his lead, hasn't really exhibited much success either. People say it's an identity problem with this Maple Leafs team. John Tavares was supposed to be a fix for that. Not only was he a top free agent signing, but he also was a captain of the New York Islanders, so he probably had some leadership that he should have shared, right? But now he's not the captain anymore, so optics have changed with Toronto, and for Mitch Marner, you can debate that his overall attitude and the way he looks out there on the ice, his temperament, especially when the team ends up losing, it is something to be questioned here. And it's not even just, oh yeah, he yelled at his teammates when they got 3 goals scored against them. It's like the whole package here. It's everything that you see out of Marner. He seems like he is quick to give up. Maybe if it's a different leadership core in front of him, that doesn't happen as often. If it's Brendan Gallagher setting an example instead, then maybe there are some positive results to be had. Now, the biggest red flag that Dumont writes about, and this is also an extra thing here too, is Marner's play in recent years without Matthews. With Matthews, Marner had controlled 52.5% of the shots while he's on the ice. Without Matthews, that number drops to 44.8%. The same phenomenon repeats when evaluating other key stats. With Matthews, Marner's expected goals percentage is 55.7. Without his most commonly used line mate, his expected goals drops to 45.4. The one saving grace is that he was used in a role that was much more conducive to producing when he plays with Matthews. He started 54% of his shifts in the offensive zone in those situations, whereas that number drops to 37.8% whenever the duo was split up. If Marner were to center the second line in Montreal, head coach Marty St. Louis would have to ensure he receives plenty of offensive zone starts, a strategy that would also be a boon for Demidov. And so, if you wanted to use the angle that debates that Marner is a Matthews merchant, you could do that. That's not an unreasonable thought, especially considering these advanced stats at 5v5. But ultimately, if the Canadiens are going to have to provide Marner with a top-tier sniper like Matthews in order to make Marner worthwhile, maybe it wouldn't be that bad of an idea to keep Patrik Laine around. Although, of course, you would probably ideally want to shed away Laine's contract and fill in that spot with Marner instead, unless you wanted to throw Marner at center and have him centering a line with Demidov and Laine as the second line. That doesn't sound too bad either, but of course, it's all going to boil down to what kind of temperament Marner has as a member of the Canadiens, if his leadership can really take a step up, or if he needs to be guided a little bit more. Those aren't necessarily bad, but if he follows in the footsteps of Matthews and that kind of leadership style becomes a part of him, kind of giving up on plays, not really looking all too devastated when they lose, kind of giving up depending on the situation in the game, then that might not be what the Canadiens want or even need. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the pros and cons of Marner with the Habs. The article is going to be linked in the description. Go out there and take a read at it because it is a deep piece. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.